Hello and welcome to the Elite Endurance Podcast, the podcast where I interview athletes from all across the world about their stories. On this episode, we're joined by Willy Fink. We talk about his time at Baltimore Mission Run distance team and his up-and-coming indoor races, as well as how his 2020 year went. So without further ado, let's get into it. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Willy Fink. I'm a professional runner for Under Armour Mission Run Baltimore distance. Went to Eastern Michigan, and my main distance is the 5K.
Okay, so last year you had quite a good year. I don't think you got kind of where you wanted to be at last year. I know there was definitely a few posts around like you aiming for some times that you didn't get and stuff like that. But looking forward to this year, it looks like you're in quite a good place, and especially after your 5K road race later on in the season, it looked like you were kind of getting back up to where you want to be at. So should we just start off talking about the USA's, the 5K champs? What was it like going into USA's, so pre-USA's?
So going into USA's, my training was going really well. Felt like I was really fit. Um, and then it just kind of didn't go well. I've gone back and looked at what I was doing before,
Yeah.
and maybe I overtrained a tiny bit, but I still don't really know what exactly
Mm.
went wrong there. But I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes it's just you have a bad day and overanalyzing it doesn't necessarily help. I went back, I looked at what I was doing, nutrition wise, all that stuff, and just couldn't figure out what happened. So
Yeah.
just kind of wrote it off, and then moved on. But so to give a little context to what I'm saying, earlier in the season, I was running really well. Ran a PR on the 5K, ran 13:16, and then at the U.S. champs, I ran over 14 minutes. So it was quite significantly off kind of where I was earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And pretty far off from where I thought I was going to end up. But it just happened. And, kind of like you said, I had some other races after that went better.
Yeah.
So just the ups and downs of the sport.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think you ran 14:06 or something like that.
Yeah.
When it came down to the day, obviously, like you said, you ran pretty well, 13:16, like beforehand. So when it actually came to racing in Eugene, do you think there was any aspect? Because I know obviously there was a lot of noise around people saying the crowd wasn't that great. How did you kind of find the experience from your perspective?
Comparing it to previous times I'd run at Eugene, or in that stadium, uh, I mean there were fewer people there, but I don't think that really played much of a
Mm.
factor. Like the winners still ran,
Yeah.
I don't know what Grant ran, like 13:11 or something, or maybe
Yeah.
faster than that even. Um, I like the atmosphere was still good. There were still people there. They moved the 5K to 10 a.m. To because it was really hot that weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that also played a factor, in less people being there.
Mm.
But I mean, it's always really cool when the stadium's packed and there's tons of people screaming at you. But when there was fewer, I could actually hear kind of my coach a little bit better. I could hear the specific people that I knew were there kind of cheering for me, like all the
Yeah.
Under Armour people. Like I could pick out specific voices. So that was kind of cool too. Um, so yeah, I definitely agree with what some people have said, that it was not as well attended as maybe we expected it to be. But I I think I don't think that necessarily has a negative effect on the impact, or
Mm.
negative effect on the performances, as much as having a packed stadium has a positive impact. if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. So like in terms of the stadiums, obviously Hayward is like quite a massive stadium. It has lots of potential to like fill a lot of crowds. Comparing that to like perhaps a smaller meet that you could like did earlier on in the year, how would you say like the atmosphere stack up? Where it's like a smaller meet, um, does it seem to kind of feel more crowded than these massive stadiums that feel a bit more empty, or is it kind of the same?
Yeah, definitely. Especially smaller meets where, like, they can let some of the
Mm,
spectators down onto the track.
yeah.
Like, there was a mile race I ran in Delaware where um, we the spectators came in onto the track and went all the way around it. So
Mm,
like that was really cool, and that sort of atmosphere and experience is really special. Um, so yeah, I definitely think those are really cool
yeah.
compared to a huge empty stadium.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's what the sport needs more is like these smaller meets where you can actually like stand right on the track. It kind of brings a lot more like excitement to the sport, and you can have. There's always. It almost seems like you're almost part of the race if you're like that close. Obviously, like Hayward Field, like you, there's so many people you can't have people standing on the track, and it's such like an official race. But obviously, like these
Yeah,
smaller races, even though they're official, like it's so much like better to have someone to be able to have people like right on the line to be able to watch. Also,
yeah, for sure.
was that the Delaware Mile where Sam broke 4 minutes? Was that the one?
It
Yeah,
was, yeah,
yeah. I remember watching
yeah.
the
He
video
broke
on.
four.
Yeah, I saw it on that YouTube on the Tim Annelly YouTube channel, and it looked really cool there. So, yeah,
Yeah, it was a really cool race for him, breaking four in his home
yeah,
state for the first time.
yeah. Before you ran USA's, at the Boston Marathon weekend, you competed in the BAA 5K and you came fourth. So, what was the experience like? Obviously, it's such a massive weekend where you have lots of elite athletes coming to race the marathon, but also there was the elite 5K that you raced in, and I'm pretty sure it was quite a mass participation event as well.
Yeah.
So, can you just like talk about like how that race went? Because I've seen the footage and it looks like you were pretty much nearly on for third, and then out of nowhere George Beamish comes in and just like takes two positions. So yeah, can you just like just talk through how that race went? Because obviously that was a PR race for you, and you came fourth. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, classic George.
yeah, textbook
Um,
George, as they say.
right, that's what it is. I knew I
Yeah,
classic wasn't quite right. Textbook. There we
yeah.
go. Um, yeah, that was a good race. Like you said, it's I think there they were advertising it's like it might be the most like the biggest
Mm.
5K in the world, like
Oh
in
really?
terms of participants, because it's like 20,000 people that run
Yeah.
it every year. It's yeah, it was really cool. And I had run that once before, but just every time you can come back, it's a really cool special event.
Hmm.
And like you said, there's tons of people, even the elite runners as well as anybody who gets into Boston. Um, well, you have to be pretty fast to get into Boston, but anybody who gets into Boston, they're also there at that point because it's a couple days before the Boston Marathon. So yeah, it's just kind of like the pinnacle of Boston running, which is already a pretty good city for like running,
Yeah.
as a running community. That is, so yeah, it was a really cool just weekend as a whole, even outside of the race, which yeah went really well. I kind of started off a little conservatively, picked my way through the field, and yeah, there's like a 90-degree turn with maybe I don't know 250 300 meters to go in the race, and kind of going into that turn I was catching people, moved up into third, thought I was maybe going to catch one more guy, and then yeah, like you said, George just blows by,
Yeah.
and gets second, and so yeah, it's still like yeah, I was still really happy with it. um, Fast race. I think I ran like 13:35 that day. which that course has got some hills in it. Like I said, a 90-degree turn right before the finish.
Mm.
So it's not the easiest course in the world. So yeah, I was really happy with it.
Yeah. So are you looking forward to like participating in more road races this year? Obviously, you
I
got
go back and
indoors.
forth on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still gonna focus on track
Mm.
for at least the next couple years.
Yeah.
Um, but I like the roads, and I like going to run road races where I can. There are a
Mm.
few I run a few every year, just because it's a different experience
Yeah.
than track racing, because a lot of the times there's like a mass participation race going on right behind you. So there's, on a track race you don't get 5,000 people running behind you, cheering you on and
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff. So that it's a pretty fun thing to do. But for now, I'm just kind of keeping it as that fun thing to do here and there.
Yeah.
Not really planning on
Yeah.
making a big jump to the roads.
Yeah. I was definitely gonna say like there's something more interesting like as a participator than watching people run in circles. Um like if you're participating in it, like once you finish you can still see people going, but like obviously when you're an elite athlete, you finish and then you have quite a lot of people finish behind you, and then it's kind of done and then it's over and then it's on to the next event. So and also like I feel like there's a bit more competition because the terrain can change on a road race,
Mm-hmm.
whereas like obviously track is more like time focused. So speaking
Yeah,
of
yeah. There are times where it's like a
yeah.
time trial race, times where
Mm.
track races can still be tactical and exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely the road courses become a much bigger factor
Yeah.
with the hills,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
turns, all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, there are cool parts of both, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of race tactics on the track, this year I'm actually gonna. This is gonna be my first year of actually racing the track. I'm gonna do like a couple of 5Ks and the 10Ks. What would your best advice be for anyone listening or for me when racing track?
Okay. Uh, so you're saying you're just starting on the track, but
Yeah.
you've run like road races before, right?
Yeah, so I've been running for 3 years and I've only run road
Okay,
races and a bit cross
cool.
country, so I've never experienced the track. Um, I know a lot of people say get out hard and just try and hang on, but obviously some races are tactical. So what's your like best suggestion?
Yeah. So if it's especially in your first 5K or 10K on the
Mm.
track, it's a lot of laps.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, I would recommend trying to get out hard, and but find somebody you can kind of run with,
Okay.
where because if you're running by yourself for a whole 5K or a whole 10K on the track, it gets pretty monotonous.
Yeah.
And there's more chances for your brain to kind of turn off. And when that happens, if you're alone, there's a tendency to slow down a little bit, even though you might not intend to.
Yeah.
So yeah, try to find somebody to run with. But it is cool because you can also see your splits as well. Usually there's a clock, so you can see your splits as you go by every lap. So you can kind of, if even if you are alone, you can kind of check on your time every time you go by the start finish line, so you can kind of double check yourself, make sure you're on pace, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You definitely don't need to run with a watch, which is cool. So if you're used to running with a watch for like 5Ks, 10Ks on the road, you don't need it on the track because, well, assuming there's a clock.
Mm.
Some smaller races, I guess, might not have that. Um, but yeah,
Would
I don't know.
you?
They're fun. I like
Yeah.
them.
Would you suggest like if it was my first race and obviously I'm so used to using my watch, would you suggest trying it without a watch or because I know there's a lot of like sports psychology around not racing with a watch at all and just like going out and just trying to stick with people. Would you suggest like trying not to use it or I don't know, like what do you do?
Yeah, I would suggest, especially for your first track race, uh, assuming there are people around you, definitely don't wear a watch.
Yeah.
And as long as you have people to run with, try not to even look at the clock.
Okay.
Just kind of go by feel,
Mm.
uh, because you can pretty accurately gauge how you're feeling on a track because you know exactly kind of how far you have,
Yeah.
and there's never going to be like a hill you have to worry about, and like you don't have to worry about conserving energy for any 180-degree turns or anything like that. So yeah, I would just, especially your first one, try to run by feel. um, and that's what I always do. So
Yeah.
I never wear a watch, even on road races. um, I never wear a watch while I'm racing. uh, but if I tried a longer road race, I might
Yeah.
change that up. But
Yeah.
for like road miles, road 5Ks, 10Ks, I don't think you need it.
Yeah. I definitely think
Or
there's
I don't think I need it, I guess.
Yeah. I definitely think there is this thing that I have that I have become too reliant on it or not reliant enough. Like the other week I did a 10k. Actually Adam was there. So I did the 10k. It's local to him, so because he was back in England for the week.
Yeah.
So I went out there and did it with him, and I was racing, and I relied so much on my watch that it turns out I'd started it about 30 seconds late. So I thought I was like so on for a sub 35, and then across the line it's like my watch says 35:11, and I was like, oh, maybe the chip time will be closer to 35, so I can be like super confident. And then I got the chip time back, and it was like 35:24, and I was just like, oh. um, so yeah, do you think like, especially in training as well, like obviously with you have your coach to train with, but is there times when you need a watch compared to like when you should be racing like just on or like training just on how you feel? Because I find like personally, especially when I do a recovery run the day after a track session, I try not to look at my watch too much.
Yeah, there are times for both.
Yeah.
I will say during training I always at least wear a watch.
Mm.
Um, like kind of like you were saying, I try not to look at it on like the super easy runs where I'm not worried about my pace, but I still want to kind of have a pretty good idea of
Yeah.
what distances I'm running and stuff like that. Um, but I used to have like a loop right from my house where I knew exactly what distance I was running. Uh,
Mm.
and there were some times where when I lived there, I would just leave my watch at home because I knew, hey, this loop is 3 miles. If I go do it 2 or 3 times, that's 6 or 9 miles, and I'll just go by feel, and you know that'll be good enough. The other cool thing is Under Armour running shoes have a chip in it, so you can
Oh
sync it to
yeah,
your phone,
I've heard about
and you can
this.
track your distance just from the shoe, without wearing a watch. So that was also cool. Like I could go do that loop a couple times,
Mm.
and then after the fact, check my pace, check my cadence, my distance, all kinds of stuff like that. So, um, you know, that's not
Yeah.
exactly what you were asking, but I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, there are times where I don't think you need a watch at all. But when you're doing harder training, it definitely is very important to have a watch and keep track of what you're doing so you don't overwork or underwork.
Yeah.
Usually, overworking is the bigger concern
Yeah.
there. But yeah,
So we were speaking before the podcast about how you've been with Under Armour ever since like you went pro.
Mhm.
So what's the setup like now? Obviously, you're now in Baltimore with the Baltimore Mission Run Group. How's everything going over there, and how has training been looking over the winter for you?
yeah, it's great. Like we talked about it a little before the podcast started, but Under Armour just built a 400-meter track at their global headquarters, which is in Baltimore. So now we kind of have our own home track that we can go to for workouts. There's a weight room there as well, so we can just get our workout or like get our track session, then go get our weights done, and it's all right there, and that's really cool. And yeah, the team's growing. We just signed a couple new people. Yeah, recently signed Adam, your friend there,
Yeah.
Adam Fogg. He's a good dude. And then we also just signed Ahmed Jaziri and Alec Baston, who are both super solid runners. I think Ahmed gets into town tomorrow, or maybe
Cool.
tonight. One of the two. So everybody kind of went home for like the Christmas holiday season. So everybody's getting back into the swing of training together. And we're really excited for both indoor and outdoor season. Just excited for the whole year. So yeah, a lot of good stuff coming.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, obviously where you said, how many years have you been signed with Under Armour now? It must be quite a few, right?
I've been with Under Armour basically since the start of 2020.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So,
So you
been a
were
couple
literally
years.
like joining Baltimore distance is obviously quite a new thing compared to like when you first started training. So how would you say that's changed, being a part of a team now?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, just having built-in training partners, all kind of focused on the same sorts of things. Some of the guys focus on different events, but yeah, just having that team atmosphere like you do in college and high school is really special and really cool to have, especially at the professional level.
Yeah, it's quite strange. Like in the UK, we don't really have a system like America. I'm not sure if but like, so we have all these like individual clubs in your towns that you do, like you can do outside of school and stuff, but we don't have a very like institutionalized system like within education. Like I didn't have an option to run until I went to university because I didn't even know.
Wow.
Like we didn't even do our school just did football, rugby, and it, as in that's just like soccer. And then we did a bit of American football as well, but like that was like 4 people did that. It was like 4 people like in my form, and then like they made a team across the years which would compete against like another school that happened to also do American football. But it was really strange that like every year we would have something called Sports Day, which is where we would have running races, but we didn't train running at all like throughout the whole school year. So it's just such a strange concept for I know quite a lot of other people that I've spoken to ended up getting into running a lot later than they would have if they had like found out about it before. Because personally, me, like I said, this is going to be my first year of running the track, and I've only been running for 3 years because it's just such a strange like system. So anyway, UK, change your system.
Find out, did you find out after the fact if like does your town actually have a track club and you just didn't know about it? Or
So
do they just not have one?
No, so we do have a team, but it's kind of, it's not really like a competitive team. If I wanted to join, and we also don't have, in my town, we don't have a track. Like I have
to. That makes it difficult.
Yeah. So there's there's 2 tracks in kind of probably in like a 20-mile radius of where I live. So I have to travel like at least like 10 or 20 miles to get to the closest track. Which now I'm older, of course, I just get in the car and I just drive there and train. But like there's no kind of actual track. And that's my dream, to have a track built in my hometown. But we just don't have the what's it called? Like it's not as popular, I would say, because it's quite a small kind of club in our town, if that makes sense. There's not many of us. I'd say there's probably like 50 to 60, but then as soon as winter comes, it goes down to like 20 people.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like the UK needs to get their act together and get more people running, because it's such a great sport. But like,
yeah, it is.
But then you go to London.
It's the best.
This is crazy. Like we go to the capital city, London, and there's a track in every like area. Like you just like there's so many tracks everywhere, which is obviously like the best part about running. But yeah, so looking forward to this year. Obviously, indoor season is pretty much we're knocking on the door of it. Do you have any races lined up?
Yeah, I do. So I'll be racing a 5K at the end of this month at Boston University. Um, I think it's the 27th. Yeah,
Okay.
27th. Um, so that's shaping up to be a pretty fast race. I know a bunch of guys are going for like 13:10 or faster.
Mm.
So working hard to get into that sort of form so I can, you know, try to run a PB. And so the world standard for outdoors is 13:07. So like
Okay.
in an ideal world, that's the goal. But just kind of taking it one step at a time.
Mm.
See how I'm feeling like the week of the race. But yeah, that's pretty much the goal,
Yeah.
is to try to run right around there, or at least fast enough to get my world ranking high enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the first race, and then that weekend I'm also going to New York to pace some of my teammates. Um, it Casey Comer and John Renowicki, kind of the only two guys I haven't mentioned yet. Um, they're running a 3K in New York, so I'll be pacing them for that. Um, then going to Winston Salem for the Camel City Elite meet, running a 3K there. I've run that meet the past few years, and it's been mostly good. Won the mile a couple times in a row, so it's a pretty competitive race. So like that's been really cool. Going back to try to win the 3K. Um, and then from there, not really sure yet. That's like February
Yeah.
3rd ish. So still trying to figure it out after that.
Yeah. So if you run a 13:07, let's say in an ideal scenario indoors, does that allow you to qualify automatically for outdoors, or do you have to run that time again later on in the year for outdoors as well?
No, indoor times count.
Okay.
So yeah, that would get the qualification out of the way. I would still have to finish top three at USA's, which is
Mm.
another thing, all
Yeah.
another whole nother issue. But that would at least take care of one of the boxes.
Yeah. So, okay. So it works like you have to qualify to get to USA's, and then after USA's, you have to be in the top three to actually go
To
on
make the world
to
team.
make the world team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Is
Yeah.
it?
So it doesn't take a 13:07 to get to USA's.
Mm.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Of
I think
course.
the US standard, I think, is usually like last year it was 13:25. I don't think they've announced it
Yeah.
for this year yet. But yeah, so you just have to run that to get into USA's.
Mm.
But yeah, if you want to make the world team, you have to have the qualification standard and be top three.
Yeah.
And you can also qualify by world rankings, which is another whole complicated system.
Mm.
So it's just easier to run the standard and know you have it, and then finish top three.
Yeah. Definitely. Obviously, Grant Fisher, as we mentioned earlier before, he is pretty like he's a machine, and I'm pretty sure he would have medaled at Worlds if he didn't trip over. But how would you say Bauman stacks up against a lot of other teams? Because I noticed they always seem to do like just time trialing throughout the year. Um, and obviously, there's been a lot of talk about getting the world points. And to get points, you have to obviously compete. Do you see that they might be starting to change things up, or do you think they'll probably carry on with the normal time trialing this year?
I mean, they usually run fast enough that
Yeah.
they can hit the standards anyway. So I don't see them changing their tactics.
Mm.
But I think, I mean, they're kind of an outlier. They have
Yeah.
some really talented guys. I think for the most part, most groups, and like kind of OAC is getting close to that level too.
Yeah. Definitely.
Where they can pretty steadily run the standards without having to worry too much about it. But I mean, yeah, for the most part, most groups probably are going to have to, at least take one or two shots at most standards, whether it's 5K, 1500, 10K, whatever they're going for.
Yeah.
But I think like the biggest change is just going to be that and we've seen this the past couple of years, like back in like 2017 or something. If you were going to a fast race looking for a fast 5K, it was probably being paced at like 13:25, which used to be the world standard and Olympic standard from like 2016. And then after like 2019, I think, was when the standard came down to 13:13. All of a sudden, every race was being paced at 13:13. And then now, every race is being paced at 13:07 to 13:10.
Yeah.
So I think it just kind of shifts people's mindset to be like, okay, well, now I have to run this. So this is what I'm going to try to run.
Yeah.
So I think, until the standards are like 12:55 or something like that, I think people are just going to be like, all right, well, now we have to time trial harder.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
I
don't think it's going to work out as well as World Athletics is thinking.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, the times to like be able to compete nationally is getting faster and faster and faster and faster. Do you see like it being harder and harder for people who are kind of coming into the sport a bit later on to actually be able to become elite? Or do you see it being like more of a positive that it makes the whole thing more competitive?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't really considered that too much. So what I've seen is people just kind of see it like everybody's getting faster, so it encourages everybody else to also like work harder, get faster.
Yeah.
Because I see people run fast. I'm like, oh, I've run with that person before. I can do that. So I think to an extent, it's just been kind of like this shifting mindset where people just see other people running faster and are like, okay, I'm gonna run fast too. Obviously, it's not that simple. Like if it was, then we would all be running 12 minutes or something in the 5K, which is not the case. But I guess and if you're a new runner starting out, you're probably not going to be looking at what the top echelon of professional runners are doing anyway. If you are, that's sweet. Like that's cool to be a fan of the sport. But like, beginning runners are usually more focused about like, how do I finish a 5K more than let me try to run 13 minutes in a 5K.
Yeah.
I worked at a running store for a little while, and that was back in like 2019. So like I worked with a lot of people who are new to running, and that was kind of my experience with newer runners, especially like people who are more in like their 30s and 40s, just kind of using running to get into shape. So I don't think that'll change anytime soon. But if we can, if we can figure out a way to get those type of people interested in professional running, that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
How do we do that? I don't know. That's a huge
question. That's always the question that I kind of leave in the back somewhere, and I always think, how can we inspire more people to get involved? Because obviously I'm a massive fan of the elite sport scene and stuff, but I think a lot of people, they just see, it's like a load of sweaty dudes running around a track or a load of girls running around in circles. Like, is that cool to them? Perhaps not, but like when you know the stories behind the people, so that's obviously why I do the podcast, because I always like to find out about everyone, so then when I'm watching I'll be like, I know everything about Willy Fink when he's racing and and all that stuff. So that's kind of the reason why I do it. We need more viewers though, so please, if you're listening right now, subscribe, hit the subscribe button.
Smash that like button.
Yeah, exactly. We need to get the algorithm going so I can get more views. So anyway, obviously 13:07 is obviously the ultimate goal this year. Obviously you've got some races coming up in indoors and then outdoors, and I think this kind of moves us quite well onto the next section of the podcast, which is no context track. So to the viewers who haven't seen this before, this is basically where I've sent Willy a photo of a race that he's done recently. I think it was sometime last year. And I think the photo just needs a bit more context. So have you got the photo?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. Do you want me to pull it up?
No, it's fine. Can you just? Oh, you obviously know
Okay.
what the photo is. So
I do.
the
Yeah.
photo will appear on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Spotify, then go over to YouTube. Like, what are you doing on Spotify? um, because this section doesn't work on Spotify, but I never thought that through. Anyway, if you can just, for the listeners who are just listening, can you describe what the photo is? I think it, and then basically tell the story behind it.
Yeah, so it's a extreme close up of me just like on the ground, breathing really heavily after a race, just like head in my hands, just dead. Do you want me to give like the actual context, like
Yeah,
what
just
actually happened,
well,
or is
you
this like a joke thing?
well you can make a joke, you can make fun of yourself, but it only really works when you have
Okay,
more than one people. But if you want to make a joke of yourself,
gotcha.
feel free. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
just
what I
like to
was
do
like.
the
I could make fun of myself, but that might get pretty self-deprecating.
yeah
So yeah, I'll just
yeah
give the actual
the real
context here,
context. Yeah.
the real story. Um, so yeah, this is yeah, it was 2021. Okay,
Yeah,
that wasn't
yeah,
that long
yeah.
ago.
I was actually
Um,
I do have it in my notes here. Yeah.
nice. All right. So that race was one of the times I was like all gung ho about I need to run 13:13. So there was this race in Austin, Texas in
Hmm.
February of 2021. Um, so like I was thinking, all right, cool. It's an outdoor track race in Texas in February. So like the weather should be good because Texas is pretty warm, but it's February. It's the winter. It shouldn't be that bad. Um, and it turned out to be like 80 degrees and like 90% humidity. So all of the 5K and 10K racers just had to suffer through
Mm.
this terrible conditions. But I was still like, I didn't live anywhere near Texas. So I flew to Texas. I was like, all right, screw it. I'm gonna go for it. We're gonna make this happen. Um, so we had a pacer for like he was supposed to go 3K. I think he and like dropped out a little sooner. But I was like right on him. And so when he dropped out, I was like, all right, here we go. I'm gonna do this myself. Like, let's go. And I just kind of underestimated how bad the conditions were. Like trying to run in 90 degrees and or I think it was 80. Trying to run in 80 degrees and 90% humidity is not the best time to run a fast 5K or 10K for that matter. There was a
Yeah.
10K after the race, after our race. So like, yeah, I was leading this like fast 5K and I just blew up. Like with 800 to go, everybody started going by me. And I kind of, responded a little bit. I think I still ran like in the 1330s or something. But just after that race was probably the most exhausted I'd ever been. Because just leading for, I think the pacer stepped off at like 2K,
Yeah.
and then I led from 2K to like 800 to go. So I led a good portion of that race, and it just took a lot out of me. And so as soon as I crossed the line, I was just like, damn, and just like fell onto the ground and was just tired. So I was really tired there. That's
Yeah.
the TLDR is I was really tired.
Yeah. That's fair enough. I always like to find out these like the context of the race, like behind it, because there's lots of things that a lot of people don't see. Like you see the post, but like what actually happened is always seems to be a lot more interesting than the post itself, even though it's a pretty cool photo of you looking absolutely wrecked. So are you looking, what's your biggest thing? This can be within running or without outside of running. What are you looking forward to for 2023?
Just trying to stay consistent, stay healthy. I had some issues with COVID this year, and I kind of didn't mention it earlier, but I think that was one of the things that was still lingering a little bit at USA's.
Yeah.
Like I had caught COVID earlier in the year and just, had some long COVID sort of issues where I was having trouble breathing. So yeah, this year, just trying to stay healthy, stay consistent, and just keep going. Hopefully not have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah. Cool. So I think that leads really well onto the final questions of the episode. I hope you're ready for this, because we've had some interesting answers throughout the podcast. So if you were stranded on a desert island and you could be with anyone throughout history, whether they be factual or fictional, who would it be and why?
Yeah. So it can only be one person, right?
It can be, yeah, but usually a lot of people like to voice all of their ideas. So if you do have more than one idea, then obviously feel free to voice all of them and then decide. But yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I was trying to think of like a more fun answer than this, but I just kept going back to my wife, because she's like my best friend, and I love her and all that cheesy stuff.
Yeah.
But like,
that's awesome.
Other than that, get that answer out of the way.
Get her out of the way.
Love her, but like some more fun answers. I don't know. I feel like being stranded on an island with like Bear Grylls would be cool. Like, he's the survival dude. So like having him just like catch all of our food and water and stuff, like
you wouldn't have to do any work
on me.
Yeah,
exactly. Like I could just chill and he would go. And like I feel like getting his perspective on things would be funny. Just like hearing him talk about like his opinions on, I don't know, everything, society, whatever. I think he's got some interesting things to say. So yeah, I think he would be a cool dude to hang out with. But yeah, that was all I thought of. So
yeah, I think that's pretty good. You are the first person this year to say Bear Grylls, so I'll let you off. Usually last year
is that a common answer?
Well, yeah, last year I had to ban, towards the end of last year I had to ban Bear Grylls because so many people started saying him every episode. They'd be like, I don't know, Bear Grylls, that would be pretty cool. But the thing is, you gave an actual really cool answer that you want to know more about him and not just like let him do all the work. So I'm gonna let you off. So yeah, that's definitely a good one. And then the final question is, what is the funniest story that you have? It can be during a race, something you've seen during a training run, preferably not bowel problems, because obviously that's the most common running answer anyway. But yeah, do you have any?
Like back in 2019, so, or I think it might have been 2018 actually. In college, I used to run the steeplechase.
Okay.
So 2018 was kind of my first year out of college, and I was kind of switching from the steeplechase to the flat events, to try to kind of focus on those, which I've done ever since. But so it was my first year out of college. I was kind of like, all right, I'm done with the steeplechase. I'm going to go run a flat 3K at this meet in Boston. So I go to Boston for a flat 3K, and then like somebody fell directly in front of me, like halfway through the race. So I had to hurdle him, and I was like, well, what the hell? I thought this was going to be a flat 3K. Now I'm running the steeplechase.
Yeah. I guess that's a really good skill to have, being able to hurdle, especially when it's all bunched up on the track. You can just hurdle over him. Doesn't matter. That's a good story. That's a really good story. Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been great to chat to you and find out more about your story. Looking forward to seeing what happens in 2023. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, we'll see you next week. Bye.